With the news that a third Ukrainian National Guardsman has died from wounds sustained in these clashes on Monday outside Parliament in Kyiv, Ukraine finds itself once again at a tough political crossroads. The violence was sparked by MPs backing for a draft bill which could see militant-occupied regions of East Ukraine granted more autonomy. The motion still needs to pass a second reading, but it is already seen by many, and especially ultra-nationalists, as a capitulation to Russia, which has supported the insurgency in Ukraine's Donbas region with weapons and soldiers from its armed forces. Many believe that the legislation, which was put forward by Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, has come about as the result of pressure from Kyiv's Western allies, who are keen to see the conflict in East Ukraine come to an end. Our correspondent Natalka Pisnia spoke to David Kramer of the McCain Institute in Washington, who warns that the West must tread a careful line.
The West needs to understand that this is an incredibly sensitive and difficult issue for Ukraine. The protesters are under the belief that the West is pressuring Ukraine to give up control over the territories in the east. They think that the West is applying too much pressure on Ukraine, not enough on Russia. Of course, there are sanctions in place against Russia, but there haven't been any new sanctions really to speak of this year. So the perception among the people out in the streets of Kyiv today is that the West is leaning on the Ukrainians, it's not leaning enough on Russia.
In the wake of the violence, the coalition government, led by President Poroshenko, is showing signs of splitting, something which could plunge Ukraine into further chaos. Such a turn of events, say analysts, needs to be avoided, if only to dent the Kremlin's narrative about events in Ukraine.
I think that the ones who are the happiest about what happened today, tragically, are the people in the Kremlin. They are the ones who want these pictures of Ukrainians engaging in violence against Ukrainians because that suggests that Ukraine is out of control, that it is a bad country that the West should not be supporting. Of course we should be supporting it. And most importantly, we have to remember, none of this would be happening had Putin not invaded Crimea in February 2014, eastern Ukraine a few weeks after that. Ukraine, despite the violence and the protests from November 2013 to February 2014, Ukraine had been a peaceful country. There was no separatism, there was no violence, interethnic violence, Russians against Ukrainians, until Putin started all this. And so he's the one ultimately to blame.
The bill which sparked the clashes received the support of 265 MPs. But in order for constitutional changes to be made on its next reading, it must gain a supermajority of 300 votes, something which few expect will be possible.